For those who are just joining in, welcome. This is a South Florida Tech Talk. You've tuned in right at the right time here at 6 o'clock. So Tech Talks, we do every Monday at 6. Obviously, we do those in person. Given the circumstances, they are all virtual now. And thank you again for joining and following along. So glad to have some folks here taking part. Today, for this Tech Talk, we're going to be having a conversation on cybersecurity. Specifically, the topic is why having zero trust is so critical. So really lucky to have the CISO from Cloud Computing Concepts, C3, which is based in Delray Beach, one of our members, Michael Scheidell, who will be joining us and talking a little about the importance of cybersecurity and this trust. So for those who haven't been to talk before, these are about 15 minutes-ish type TED Talks with questions and answers. So if you're online, you can follow along and then post your questions in the chat function there, and we will be more than happy to read them off as we go and towards the end. But with that, thank you very much, Michael, for joining us today, and look forward to the presentation.
Yeah, good evening. Let me click buttons here and see if I get the right thing to happen. And I think I got it. All right. So again, I'm Michael Scheidell, Cloud Computing Concepts, and we're going to talk about zero trust, how we got to here, where we're going, and how to make sure you don't get caught in it. And I do not have my slides. There we go. Mike, a little bit of information about me, Cloud Computing Concepts. I operate a geodiverse VMware cloud structure. I'm also the president of the Cloud Security Alliance, South Florida. Got patents and awards in network security, protected U.S. top secrets, worked with the FBI and U.S. Secret Service on cybersecurity initiatives. So let's talk about zero trust, protecting the castle. How did we get here? Then we're going to talk about zero trust. Zero trust is replacing, trust but verify, involves in additional identity and access management features, lots of logging, lots of policies, and we'll talk a little bit about 5 steps to get there. So network firewall is kind of like the castle walls. No one goes in, no one goes out without permission. If unauthorized access is attempted, they're blocked automatically, supposedly. A moat is kind of like the protection of the firewall itself. Firewall has these APT systems that help identify dangerous inbound attachments, whether they're downloaded, emailed, or via USB or CD-ROM. Great stuff if you're actually using it and know what to do if something happens. Target had it. Target knew that they had unknown malware. They didn't have a policy to tell them what to do with unknown malware, so it just sat there on the point-of-sale systems. Now, the castle walls themselves don't need protecting. The network doesn't need protecting. You need to protect the crown jewels, the queen's bedchambers. You need to focus on the highest value items. So identity and access management, which is a part of it. So we talk identity. Who am I? Well, I'm known as Michael Scheidell, AKA @Scheidell, or whatever system I've logged into. Authentication, my password. There it is. Copy it down, try it a couple of times. Now, once you've identified yourself, once you've authenticated who you are, then there's the authorization part of it where access is granted. I've got access to security. I don't have access to payroll. I don't have access to accounting. Now, we've added to that lately, especially with all of the phishing, business email compromises, password spraying, the double check. Are you really Michael Scheidell, aka @Scheidell, password 1? So we're now using multi-factor authentication through tokens, text, push, whatever we're using it for. However, your password, or I'm going to tell you that 100% of you, if you've been on the internet for more than 5 years, one or two of your old passwords is out there on the dark net. You've probably even gotten emails with those passwords, which is another reason why you're using multi-factor authentication. So what are the excuses against zero trust, or what are the excuses heard? Well, I don't have to patch it. It's inside the perimeter. Well, we've got, I don't put endpoint software on it because it slows down the database server. We only install endpoints that go to the internet. And the receptionist workstation doesn't contain critical data. It doesn't access anything. We don't need to really protect that. Well, we use virtual desktops. We don't care if the users have endpoint security. We don't care if their 13-year-old is playing Battle.net and has downloaded a Battle.net cheat, which has got hacks in it and keystroke loggers on that laptop we've got at home that we're accessing our remote access into our company. And the other one I got from a healthcare company, they said, well, the White House can get hacked, so why should I bother? I reminded them, is it's there in HIPAA, maybe the hacker can get 3 years, but through HIPAA, they could get 5. Well, we only email confidential data internally. We don't email it outside. It just goes to all our smartphones. So an APT, what happens when it gets inside? Later on, you guys can ask me for copies of these slides and I'll sell it to you. I'll send them to you. Once it gets inside, it looks around, it can go anywhere, it can sit for 3 or 4 months, or it can sit for several years. Now, what did they miss? They missed the weakest link in the chain. Hackers call this crunchy on the outside, chewy on the inside. Microsoft had an APT lurking for 13 months. Molina Healthcare, 3 years. Why was Microsoft 13 months? They keep 12 months of archive logs and 1 month of real logs. How long was it really in there? Nobody knows. Any endpoint can be used as a launching point. Anything in your network can be used as a weapon. You can turn your HP printers into distributed denial of service attack machines. The old thing that we used to say was trust and verify. So zero trust basics. Identity and access management. Who are you really? What do you want to do and why do you want to do it? It talks about privileged access management. My standard account cannot access any privileged functions. I have to log in with a specific, separate, different account. Training, policies, and procedures. So here's the question. How many policy violations does it take before you have a breach? And aren't policy violations kind of an indication how things are going? If your policies don't work, you need to change your policies or you need to change your users. Because if you don't, the user is going to work around it. And logging, log everything. Logging to your SIEM, review the logging. Automated actions. Some SIEMs can do automated actions. So 5 steps to identity and access management and zero trust. This is from Forrester. And I think I had a slide which I lost. I'm going to have to bring it back up again. So the first step is to identify the surface you want to protect. What is it? Again, we talked about the Queen's bedchambers and the crown jewels. Where is your most important stuff? Then you need to map the transaction flows. This is kind of like a network map, Visio network map, but instead of mapping the network, you map things like how does it come in? Is it traveling through an encrypted link? When it gets down to the other end and it's stored, is it being stored encrypted? Who accesses it? How does it get accessed? What networks and what ports does it get accessed through? And then you're going to build yourself a zero trust architecture. This can be done through SDN. It can be done through VMware's NSX. And basically, you're building a silo around those particular pieces. And this is part of the, create the zero trust policy. Once you know what you've got there, who are you going to allow to access it? Are you going to allow 24-hour access? Are you going to allow access to all countries and all continents? You want to block access to Zimbabwe at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then the next part of it is to monitor it and maintain it. Now, monitoring and maintaining it is important because how do you know what you're doing is working if you're not looking at it? If somebody's hacked into your house or broken into your house, you're going to see the door kicked in, you're going to see the windows kicked in. But right now, how do you look at your computer or your computer network and tell whether somebody else is in there? We need to walk by the servers and see all the lights blinking when they're not supposed to? No, without monitoring and maintenance, you can't really tell whether there's anybody in that network. So if you're using the NIST cybersecurity framework, you can map the NIST CSF onto the steps to do zero trust without trying to learn something else. Again, we're talking about identify. What is it you're trying to protect? Where does the data flows go? And then the next step is, what are we going to do to protect it? Do we put MFA on it? Do we add additional passwords? Do we add additional steps? And then there's the detection piece of it, where you're there to detect whether anything is happening to it through the logging, through the SIEM. And then, as the same similar things to the initial steps that we talked about, how are you going to respond to it? This is the monitor and maintain. How are you going to respond to an attack? Now, nobody's ever going to get attacked. They're never going to need to be respond. They're never going to be able to recover from that response. So why even bother with response and recovery? Because, gee, it's just never going to happen to us. And that is kind of some of the attitude that happens out in the field. But you really need to have your response in play, because you don't want to be chasing that shutter down the road in order to nail it back on your house while the wind is blowing. And most of you are in South Florida. You know what I'm talking about. What are we going to do? We're going to go to Home Depot and start buying plywood an hour before the hurricane hits. And then there's the recovery piece. Power is out, so I can't plug in my coffee machine. How do I recover from this? Well, I better have a propane coffee machine. How am I going to cut the trees out from around my house? I have one of those really nice lightweight electric chainsaws. Well, better get yourself a gas chainsaw. Now, I'm going to go back and I'm going to find one of the slides that since I have some time here, I'm going to find one of the slides that I accidentally hid, that I didn't want to hide. And while I'm doing this, if there's a chat, you want to ask some questions on this chat, and I'll start looking at this. I'll start looking for this slide.
Yeah, so if anybody does have questions, just punch them in chat, either on LinkedIn or Facebook, wherever you're watching, and I'm going to take a look at those right now.
Interesting. I must have deleted it. Well, I'll add it if anybody asks me for the slides. It's a definition of zero trust from Forrester Research. Talks about what zero trust is, why it's important. Official definitions. It's always great to have official definitions instead of just listening to, some talking head talking about it. And do we have any questions yet?
I'm not seeing any just yet.
Yeah, I wonder if I just wrote over it somehow.
Maybe we can just move on a little bit, and then we'll see.
All right. So this is what's going on. Businesses are at risk. Computers need patching. We need to deal with passwords. We've got weak passwords. We've got old passwords. We've got vendors with administrator passwords that we don't even remember whether they're there. We don't know whether they're being used. They haven't been used in months, but they're live. Went to help a company move over a healthcare system, and there were 10 people working at the company at that time. They were a billing company, and there were 50 live usernames and passwords on the system, some of them 10 years old. Some of them, the passwords hadn't been changed for 10 years. Some of them were, half of them were for 5 of the original people that worked there. Now, do you have people downloading game programs? Now we're talking about remote access a lot now, and on the shared laptop, you've got game programs. These game programs, and especially the cheats for these game programs, are full of malware and spyware. So your corporate network is safe. You're using virtual desktop or you're using VPN, and there's a keystroke logger as you log in. And even if you're using multi-factor authentication, can you tell me that everything else that you access for the corporate network, finance systems, payroll system, bank account systems, it's recording the account names and the passwords and all your keystrokes? What about your own website, your public websites? Are you patching those? You got WordPress. Automatic patching and updating on WordPress, check it every month. Put a web application firewall on it. Make sure that your passwords are strong. What about temporary files on your website? If you go to Google and you Google for PowerPoint and confidential, you're going to find a lot of confidential files sitting out there on networks that people don't really even think about it. Again, the weakest link in the chain, receptionist workstation. I did some work at a broker and found a 3-month-old spreadsheet with positions and client information sitting on the receptionist workstation. What happened was the CEO bought a new computer and he handed the receptionist the old workstation, created her an account on it, but his old account and all of his files were still down there. Vendor accounts. Vendor accounts are extremely dangerous. Now let's quick talk about the rest of it. Do you trust everyone? Think of the most sensitive information. Who could do the most damage with it? Are you going to be blackmailed? Are you going to lose business? And let's just go back to no questions. There's my 15 minutes, Joseph.
We got one question here, actually, from Todd Alpert from Boca Code. He was asking, any software or plugins that you recommend for any monitoring?
Depends on the network. I like to collect logs for everything. Depending on the size of your company, you can get free copies of Alien Vault. And the free copies of Alien Vault, you spin up your own server, and there's agents you can put on your machines. Mostly I tell you to put them on your servers, your Active Directory servers, SQL servers, database servers, file servers, or any critical machines, and it'll send all of the Windows event transactions off to Alien Vault, and you can set up rules to have it email you and alert you when something happens.
Okay. I'm not seeing anything else on there, but what would be a good first step, Michael, for an organization like ours, let's say for Palm Beach Tech? We have a very light touch, on our digital presence. What's one thing that we should do first if we're worried about cybersecurity issues?
What is the worst piece?
What's the one thing that we should do as a a small organization, or in this case, like a small company, right?
Well, you need to find. Well, hopefully you're using multi-factor authentication. I wouldn't even, I wouldn't go anywhere without MFA. I mean, just period. Yeah, MFA. It's easy. Everybody's using it. Amazon's using it. How many of my cousins, nieces, and nephews have said, "Oh, somebody hacked into my Amazon account and just sent a $5,000 computer to Zimbabwe, and I can't get it back." And all they have to do is put multi-factor authentication on it, either through an application or a text message. And even text messages aren't that secure because there's this SIM cloning where somebody can pretend to be you and go down to the Verizon store and make a big fuss and whine and noise and carry a screaming 3-year-old with them, and then they're going to get a SIM card with your number on it. And as far as you or anybody else goes, you have to identify what's the most important things. Do you have any confidential information? Do you have lists of bank accounts? Do you have, you guys have a bank account, right? Somebody's got to be paying for something, right? You're collecting
for
credit
sure.
cards and credit card information, even even if you're going through a third-party provider. To do that path through the third-party provider needs to be protected. So, the first part of that, which was we talked about, was identification. Identify what you got, identify what you're looking for.
All right, we have another question here from James, who is asking, what are the best methods for keeping a website secure during development?
Don't put it on the internet. Security by obscurity, hide it, put it somewhere, don't put it on your domain, don't let it be searchable. Maybe, don't have a name on it. I don't know. You can use a robots.txt file to tell the robots not to scan it, but robot.txt file to hackers it's not an access control list. It is an invitation to look at things. So we used to put honeypots up there, and we put a phony directory called account list or something like that, and we put a robots.txt line in there to tell the bots not to look for it. And then obviously if somebody looked for it, then they're looking for it on purpose. Keep it updated, keep it patched, especially if you're using WordPress. Subscribe to all of the emails, the security logs, and for all of the add-in plugins that you're using. Now, and when you're done with this, when you're done with it and you're ready to go live, take off all of the development software and all of the backup software, because you can go to wordpress.com/backup/all my files, and there's all your backups, which probably include the INI file with your username, with your account username and passwords in it.
Gotcha. And Michael, you work, I'm assuming, pretty much every single day with all of this. What's the, without naming names, what's the the worst negative that you've seen where somebody has been attacked or breached, or something like that, and what was the outcome of it? Like, if you don't do these things, what's the worst that you've seen happen?
A small law firm got CryptoLocker, debated as to whether they wanted to pay or whether they wanted to restore from their backups. And there was two paths going on. And as they were restoring from the backups, the hackers reminded them that they didn't just encrypt it, they downloaded a copy of it. And if they didn't pay, they would start sending emails and copies of their data to the clients themselves. Now, once you pay a hacker, once you pay the ransom, you don't get the data back. And for a law firm, there are specific rules for law firms, ABA rules and Florida rules, ABA Rule 1.1, 477R, 483. If you're a law firm and your client data gets breached, you're required to call the client on the telephone and tell them. How do you think that goes over? So maybe that was it. Put them out of business. They closed. It put them out of business. What are the millions of dollars that are going through to pay for CryptoLocker? Atlanta paid millions. I guess maybe if we go back to 2003, because we had a lot of loss of life. 2003, the slammer worms shut down 911 call centers because of the OEM copies of Microsoft SQL Server. So they couldn't route fire, rescue, and police because the SQL databases that drove this were dead and people died. So maybe we're not just talking about money, maybe we're talking about loss of life.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that's something you don't think about, especially. I mean, governments have been hit as much as anybody with a lot of this.
And if NSA and CIA, you've got the names of your covert operators and your confidential human sources.
Yeah.
And what about China hacking into Google and getting information on dissidents that have been using Google?
Yeah.
Loss of life.
I feel you. So, with that, Michael, thank you very much for today. We're just about at time. And thank you, of course, to C3 and Rick and Dino and the whole team over there for being supporters of Palm Beach Tech. Greatly appreciate everything that you guys have done for us and just done in general for the tech community here in South Florida over these last few years. So again, this is all really great stuff. I hope I never have to worry too much about it, that I have my stuff all secured, but, it's important to always get that refresher for sure. So, Michael, thanks again. And, look forward to doing more with you guys in the future as well.
All right. Thanks, Joe. And good night, everybody. Keep it safe.